Welcome into the very first debut episode of Rossi on Wrestling. I am your honored host, Jason Rossi. This is going to be the most hard-hitting, action-packed, fun wrestling podcast you will find on the interwebs today. That's right, you can search out all your favorites, all the big names out there. There will be nothing that will be more fun, more hard-hitting, and more involved with you. That's right, you can follow me, Jason Rossi, on Twitter at Jason D. Rossi. As this is the pilot episode, we will be having a very special guest. You know, anytime, like you watch your favorite television show, and you go back, you watch a pilot, and you're like, wow, that was a lot different than where it becomes. Well, that's kind of what this show is going to be like. It's going to get a lot more modified, different changes, guests, co-hosts, all different people will be joining Rossi on Wrestling, and I could not be more excited for where this is going to go. But today's episode, the clickbait, the grinder, the man that will get you in here is the innovator of violence, the one, the only Tommy Dreamer, who will be promoting not only maybe one of the most odd interactions that I've ever had with not just a wrestler, maybe any interview I've ever had. I've spoken to thousands of artists in the music world, a few sports athletes, actors, you name it. Maybe not the guy who did who does shop talk on the internet, but this starts off in just a little bit. You'll hear this. Tommy Dreamer's talking about a baseball Hall of Famer, and he goes on a complete rant where I just didn't see it coming. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. I'm excited to have Tommy on, and he's got House of Hardcore 42 coming to Hanover, Massachusetts this coming Friday night, May 18th. Tickets $25. House of Hardcore is really the hodgepodge of wrestling right now. You get people from Impact Wrestling, formerly TNA. You get people from Lucha Underground. Both of those brands not touring. The only way to see them when they're coming here to Boston locally, where I broadcast and emanate out of, that is by seeing House of Hardcore. Tommy Dreamer will be on the card. He still has it. It is going to be an excellent show. You're going to have Sami Callihan versus local boy Eddie Edwards in a Boston street fight. We'll talk all about House of Hardcore with Tommy Dreamer coming up in just a little bit. But to start the program, we're going to get into some wrestling news, what's going on out there. First thing to mention is there's rumors now going around that John Cena and Nikki Bella's breakup is a shoot. Or should I say a work? Maybe they're working themselves into a shoot. But yes, the rumors out there is that this is all part of the Total Bellas franchise. Now, there's Total Divas that's been going on for years, which I was totally against when it first came out. I was like, no, as a wrestling fan, I don't care about Total Divas. I don't want to watch it. Then, as me and my wife, now wife, continued to watch the show every so often, it got her a little more into it. Now, she gets into wrestling. You'll probably be hearing from her. She'll be referenced as Din, because that's what I call her. We can get to that story another time. But she watches the show, and it kind of makes her watch the wrestling a little bit more. Gets more interested in the women of wrestling. So I'm like, okay, all right, let's watch this. And then sometimes you get yourself caught up in it, especially if you put on the WWE network at this point, because they run Total Divas over and over and over again. How are they not playing a Fall Brawl from 1996 on a random Thursday morning? No, we got to have Total Divas on for the next 3 hours. Me and my cat don't want to watch that. But yeah, so the rumor is that John Cena and Nikki Bella are still together. This is just a complete rumor, by the way. I'm not going to come on here and say anything. I'm not going to fact and say, oh, yeah, I heard it from Ryan Satin, I heard it from Dave Meltzer, or I heard it from this dirt sheet or that dirt sheet. We'll definitely talk about dirt sheet material on the podcast, but I don't want to reference that and be like, that's exactly what's happening, because I heard it from a dirt sheet guy. I will always give people credit. I'm not going to break news on here that I have no facts behind. I'll give you a ton of rumor and innuendo. I'll give you a ton of my opinions, but I'm not going to ever come on here and say, oh, this is exactly what it is because I know for a fact. No, it's what my thought is. Now, getting to this, John Cena, Nikki Bella, still together. Total Divas has been picked up for 3 more years on the E! Network. With the Ms. and Mrs. show debuting on the USA Network this summer, there is now a little bit of, I guess you could call, heat on Total Bellas as a side show to Total Divas. So, if you notice, if you saw any of the previews for this season of Total Bellas, you will see that they kind of show some of the behind the scenes of John Cena and Nikki Bella's breakup. So does that mean it is as authentic as their engagement? If you didn't know, the rumor of when John Cena went down on one knee, like most of us great men are now a woman that made us honest men, we did it for them. John Cena allegedly the rumor that came out early or mid last year after WrestleMania. John Cena proposed to Nikki Bella after defeating The Miz and Maurice at WrestleMania 33. I was in attendance. It was a cool moment. He gets down on the knee, proposes. Oh, he never thought this would happen. Cool thing. But the rumor came out afterwards that John Cena and the WWE brass made a deal. John Cena won the title last year, a useless title win, by the way, and also his 16th, which tied Ric Flair's quote-unquote record, that he tied that record, beating AJ Styles at Royal Rumble last year, knowing where the story was going to go from there. He would then lose it in the Elimination Chamber the following month, then get in the storyline between The Miz, Maurice, Nikki, and John so that he could propose there. Now you think, okay, that's John's idea. No. They say it was a creative's idea involving Vince McMahon and involving the producers of Total Bellas. So take that for what it's worth. Now we're hearing that they broke up. All the story came out. Now it's going to be a part of Total Bellas again. Now, if I had a reality show and I had a divorce or something terrible happen with me, yeah, you probably want it on the show because that's your real life. But we all clearly know this show is as, scripted as WWE programming. So there's a lot of ways you can go with this. My personal opinion, I really don't want to believe that WWE is making John Cena a character this much of balancing reality at this point in his career. It's not like he's 28 years old in the future of the company, like maybe someone in the position of Big Cass where you could use his, character outside of the ring or his real person outside of the ring to make his character in the ring more compelling and maybe make people care more. Kind of say that with a little bit with Rusev on Total Bellas. Yes, or Total Divas. Yes, I watch a little too much Total Divas, but anytime I can watch Lana, and now Alexa Bliss is on there. Man, these women, unbelievable. But to get to the point of this, I don't want to believe that this is a work. So I'm hoping John Cena and Nikki Bella, if they really broke up, that's it. It is what it is, and God bless those two kids. Hopefully they can find love in this crazy world. If not, just fall back on Tinder. Imagine seeing John Cena on Tinder. Now, obviously, I've never been on Tinder. It's one of the biggest regrets I have. By regret, I mean just the time it didn't work out. I've been with my wife too long to ever have been on a dating website, but that would have been... It seems like it's fun for a day. But for some of the people I talk to behind the scenes here, I work at WEEI, which you can hear this podcast is a part of the WEEI Sports Radio Network podcast network. Doesn't seem like it's all that much of a blast. Getting into some WWE in-ring news, Money in the Bank just got a huge shot in the arm for their card. Now, so far what we know of Money in the Bank, you're going to have an 8-man Money in the Bank ladder match, as well as an 8-woman Money in the Bank ladder match. So both of those will be mixtures of, it looks like 4 and 4 from Raw and 4 in SmackDown. The men's, and what they confirmed on Raw this week is that they can choose a champion of their choosing. They can just, cash in on any champion, world champion, universal champion at any time. So that probably goes the same way for the women. They could do the Raw Women's Champion or the SmackDown Women's Champion, which I really hope in the future we can change that. We can change the names of those belts. Because why is the men's universal and world, WWE championship, and then the women's is just Raw and Smack? It doesn't have that same feel. It doesn't have that oomph to it. I wouldn't mind seeing maybe a universal women's champion and a WWE women's champion or something to that degree. They can come up with something more creative if they like, or they can call me. Tommy was on creative. We'll hear a little bit about that. But yeah, so the two matches, those are the ones confirmed so far. So far confirmed, this is prior to SmackDown on the 15th of May. Alexa Bliss, Charlotte, and Ember Moon are the 4 confirmed competitors in the women's ladder match. That means there's 5 spots left. That leaves 3 from Raw, 4 from SmackDown. Mandy Rose is in there too, actually. WWE.com needs to update this. I just remembered. Mandy Rose defeated Becky Lynch in a very odd turn of events there. But yeah, Mandy Rose is also in this match. So my guess is you're going to get... For the women's side, I thought you might have saw, maybe Mickie James, because you usually get a nice veteran boost, someone that can deal with, can take some of the high spots. She's not going to be in it. So Sasha Banks is not going to be in it. Bayley's not going to be in it. They're kind of keeping those 2 women in their kind of undercard, hungry underdog phase. So my hope for them is that they can come out of this over the summer, kind of build a storyline, have some of their singles matches, have a little boiling feud, and then the winner of that feud will eventually challenge for the Raw Women's Championship come SummerSlam, but we're ways away from that. The women, I honestly, it's a hodgepodge. I'll have to really dig deep into think who's going to be in there. So that's one match confirmed. The other match confirmed, like I said, the men's Money in the Bank ladder match that has, so far, Braun Strowman, Bobby Roode, The Miz, Rusev, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens. The 2 other guys, in my quick thought, if I had to guess who's going to go from SmackDown, it's Big E Langston. There's a match that's going to take place with The Bar versus The New Day. The winner of that tag team match, one representative of their team will go in. I hope it's Push City for Big E because I would love to see it. I would love to see Kofi and Xavier Woods kind of become more of the tag team when it comes to that, but they still stay as a unit. WWE needs to do a better job of making things not just, oh, we're a tag team or we're an alliance. Or alliances are fine. Keep guys together. It doesn't have to be a big blow-off where they break up, or not everything needs to be like the Shield or the 900 tag teams that broke up in the year of 2017. I like the idea of keeping it. These guys are together. They don't have to be a unit as much anymore, but they still have an alliance. I see Big E getting in there. If it's not Big E and The Bar win, I would love to see Cesaro make his way into that match just to see the moves he can pull off. He is just an amazing, amazing, talented wrestler and someone that I think the fans giving him the more exposure, the better. We're going to start going forward on this, doing like Superstars of the Week or Surprise Performances of the Week. Now, the whole week hasn't been done by the time I record this. Natalya had a fantastic performance in a no-win situation on Raw. She was just incredible. That was the best performance I've seen from Natalya since even before her Women's Championship run last year. Even before her getting into that run against Naomi. She has just kind of been there. She's been the solid veteran, good in-ring, but never makes you go, oh, I really got to see what Natalya's going to do. I don't know if it's the face turn. I don't know if they're letting her do more, but her moves against the Riot Squad this past Monday was outstanding. She really stood out to me. And that women's six-woman tag match with Ember Moon, Natalya, Sasha Banks versus the Riot Squad. It's not going to be anything we're going to end up sending down the line, be like, you must see this women's match. But it was an incredible Raw match for the subpar Raw that we had, which included everybody in a three-way match, everybody in a tag team match. But getting back to Money in the Bank, the other confirmed match now has been Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles. At the time of this recording, there is no stipulation. My guess this will be a last man standing or I would love to see, and this event's going to be too long, and all these events are going to be too long. These guys deserve an Iron Man match. I wouldn't even mind seeing this stretch. I know as crazy as it sounds. I wouldn't mind seeing this thing to keep going. Maybe Money in the Bank. It doesn't have to be a screwy finish. Maybe Shinsuke takes the title, but he does it in nefarious means, and maybe that's why I guess the last man standing, you can do whatever you want, but just some form of just a straight match. They say whoever the best man wins the match, and maybe Shinsuke pulls one over on AJ Styles, and they go to Extreme Rules. They have some form of Extreme Rules match. I would love to see these two in an Iron Man match. I think these are the two guys in their career where they're at. I would love, love, love to see those two guys go at an Iron Man match. And the reason that Money in the Bank has gotten the shot in the arm, Nia Jax versus Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's Championship. I cannot believe it. When I heard the news that Ronda Rousey in her second match is getting a title match, at first I got pissed. Because I was like, why? You're going to ruin this. She's actually over. People are interested. This is going to ruin her. She had a great heated storyline with Stephanie McMahon, Triple H, people you could actually hate. And now it's like Nia Jax turning face and facing Ronda Rousey. I get it's a face versus face. This is a SummerSlam match to me. This is a match that could be, co-main event match on a major pay-per-view. But my two guesses why they're doing it. One, Nia's going over. Not going to beat her clean. I don't know if this is going to involve some sort of, a heel turn or somebody else coming in, or they're going to give Ronda Rousey this belt to run with and see what she can do. Because if their hopes, with the rumors out there from Wrestling Observer and some of the dirt sheets I've read, their hope is to potentially have Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey headline WrestleMania 35 in New Jersey. They have to figure out what she can do now. Because that's not that far off. You can't just keep her in these, middling feuds for a while. My opinion is I would have went, maybe a tag match with her and Natalya, keep her in these tags for a few months, maybe Extreme Rules as a turn, or Natalya turns on her for whatever reason. I just thought her and Natalya would be great because I think learning from Natalya could only do well for Ronda Rousey now that she's in the squared circle and not the octagon. But, we're going to see. I think that's going to be interesting. I'm excited for Money in the Bank so far. The card is definitely shaping up to be something that, this is a top pay-per-view. This is over Survivor Series. Survivor Series is fun now, where they do Raw versus SmackDown, but this pay-per-view it sets the tone for the rest of the year, because you don't know, who's Money in the Bank. Look at last year's Money in the Bank. It was just a SmackDown pay-per-view. You had Baron Corbin win the Money in the Bank, ends up failing the SmackDown before SummerSlam to cash in because John Cena, interfered and Jinder Mahal defeated Baron Corbin. And on the women's side, you had 2 women's Money in the Bank ladder match, because at Money in the Bank, James Ellsworth, for those who don't know, who is a male, climbed the ladder and won the briefcase and handed it to Carmella. Great heat. Did everything right, WWE. Everybody hating on it. But when you're pushing a women's revolution, it's really hard for you to go saying a man, can, I guess, quote, do it better, is what kind of came across. So then they did a follow-up match on SmackDown. Carmella won it again, and just a few weeks ago cashed in on Charlotte Flair after the debuting Iconics of Peyton Royce and Billie Kay debuted and kind of put the boots to Charlotte Flair. So this pay-per-view kind of sets those storylines up. It gives creative a whole new kind of chapter to write for 2 superstars. My early picks, if I put Big E in there and from Raw, that's really tough. They've kind of gone through everybody in their qualifiers. It may be. I hope they just put somebody in there that can do some crazy high spots, like a Kalisto style. Maybe put a 205 Live guy in. But my hope would be somebody like Big E gets this. I think something like put the Rocket on him. I could see him. I wouldn't mind Kevin Owens. People have been saying The Miz. I think he would be fantastic. I just personally would rather that feud, if it's with Daniel Bryan, just kind of be its own thing. And that's it. We didn't even talk, when it comes to Money in the Bank, there's so many superstars that don't have any storyline. I could see Daniel Bryan maybe facing Big Cass again. I could see, there's going to be no championship match from the Universal defense. So my guess there would be, you're going to get Seth Rollins. And, who's his dance partner for this IC Open Challenge? Does somebody come over from SmackDown? You put so many of these superstars, the big headline name superstars, in the Money in the Bank matches themselves. I think for my best money, I would like to see maybe Dolph Ziggler or Drew McIntyre with vice versa in his corner against a Seth Rollins, because I just think those would be, compelling matches. Something, especially Dolph Ziggler versus Seth Rollins would be outstanding, especially with this kind of, revived version of Seth Rollins. Of Dolph Ziggler. There's a lot to happen. There's a lot going on. But we will get to that. Now, this is the first episode, like I said, of Rossi on Wrestling. I want to thank you for tuning in, streaming, listening. And I have now coming up, in just a moment, the innovator of violence, the man who has started his own company, House of Hardcore. He is the biggest wrestling fan in wrestling, in my opinion. Now, Zack Ryder, huge wrestling fan, but he's become now a toy guy. I think of him as a toy guy. But Tommy Dreamer, for a guy who's running wrestling companies, who still has a connection to WWE, connection with TNA, who has a connection with every single major organization. I'm not so, he's in with Ring of Honor as well. I'm not sure how the ties are with New Japan Pro Wrestling. I have to say, I'm super excited for you to hear what he has to say. And the last bit of news I had to get to, I forgot, I want to bring this up with Tommy. All In, the Cody Rhodes and Young Bucks promotion that is going to be happening September 1st in Chicago, sold out in 30 minutes. Just so you know, you could be the biggest sports fan of any event. The Super Bowl doesn't sell out in 30 minutes. I know it's a bigger place, but they're sold out 10,000 tickets in a Chicago area arena. Not talking downtown Chicago. We're talking a Chicago suburb arena. Where Tommy Dreamer is running House of Hardcore is the equivalent of distance that Chicago is to where this All In is taking place. I am so happy. I'm proud of wrestling fans. Happy for Cody Rhodes. Happy for the Young Bucks. I am truly, truly ecstatic for the news. It is great news for wrestling fans. If you want an alternative to the WWE, you have the House of Hardcores out there. Now, this is another option, because these are guys that are tied in with New Japan Pro Wrestling, who are tied in with Ring of Honor, and they're getting their own, they put their own money where their mouth is. They're booking matches, and so far, there's only one match. It's Matt Taven versus Cody Rhodes for the NWA World Championship. That's the only confirmed match. The Young Bucks are going to be on the card. Rey Mysterio is going to be on the card, but we don't know who these guys are fighting. You don't even know what. So this is like WrestleMania type of sales. I have bought WrestleMania tickets the past 3 years in hopes that I'm going to go see an amazing card. And this year was the closest I've been. This year's WrestleMania was great, in my opinion. And it's still super long, but it was still great. And they are doing this same form of sales. They're not selling it off of matches. They're selling it off of, if you're a wrestling fan, you want something different, come out to Chicago. The secondary market is not going to get me there, but it's super, super good news if you're a wrestling fan to know that these guys are able to go out there and do their thing and just do it on their own. And Cody Rhodes is on Busted Open Radio on SiriusXM talking about that he couldn't believe that he got the news, and he said that they were at a indie event or Ring of Honor event this past Sunday when they got the news, and everybody was high-fiving, cheering that he couldn't believe in under 30 minutes they sold 10,000 tickets. In the first 10 minutes, they sold 3,000. It's insane. It's good. So my hat's off to Cody Rhodes. And this is a message to every superstar, every wrestler that's out there, anybody that's doing anything in their life that, you work for a company. If you want to go out and do something, yeah, of course, you have to build up the funds. But there is a world out there for you, especially all these WWE superstars that have been like in the middle of like that lower mid-card or just, on main events of the world. And I brought him up earlier. Someone like Zack Ryder, even a Dolph Ziggler. I know you're making a ton of money for what you're doing, and you're probably really comfortable. It's probably really good. If you ever want to get uncomfortable, but you know you have it in you to be successful, go out there and do what Cody does. Go out there and team up with him. You can think those guys are all friends. Go out there. There is a world. If you're willing to work for it, it's there for you. So my hat again off to Cody Rhodes and those guys. And at this time, I'd like to welcome in my guest, the debut guest, the very first guest on Rossi on Wrestling. It is Mr. Tommy Dreamer. Tommy, how are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing good. It's actually an amazing day. I also work with Sirius, and I just interviewed Keith Hernandez, and I know that doesn't make a lot of Red Sox fans happy.
Just going to say, dude, we're starting off on the wrong foot.
Growing up in New York and, dealing with Keith Hernandez, it was just an amazing, amazing thing where every day is an adventure, and I never thought I'd be sitting in studio interviewing him about his book, which I highly recommend, not only if you're a baseball fan, but it truly is. It's an amazing read, and he has lived a life of a total rock star, and it has nothing to do at times with baseball. It's just about the struggle of making it, and it's very politically incorrect, if I do say so myself.
We need a little more of politically incorrect. Working in the radio field, and I know you do radio stuff with Busted Open on Sirius. You're working with MLB Network. You got House of Hardcore. Like, you probably have to have that line of doing things politically correct at times, and then having, maybe getting a little loose at times. And anytime somebody can point me in the direction of anything politically incorrect in 2018, I'm on board.
He talks about, I feel, a lot of taboos in baseball, especially, he got signed when he was 18 years old. I started wrestling at 18 years old, and he talks about, taking greenies, smoking pot, doing a lot of stuff that, just people don't talk about. And, he's still involved in the game, being a broadcaster of the Mets. And yes, but it's not like he's just giving his life journey to that aspect. It's a fabulous read. And, we all want to strive to be better. And, he's became a broadcaster when he didn't want to, and he also left baseball. Like he said he didn't watch baseball after he retired for almost 7 years. He couldn't do it. And then what got him back into it was and he said the steroid era, which if you're a baseball player, you don't talk about that, and he's just like, so it is. It's a really, really cool read. And me coming from ECW, we were always politically incorrect, and damn proud of it. It's just, I get it. It's different times, and yes, it shouldn't be, but, we also want to read about it. And he opened himself up to a lot of stuff. It's really, really cool.
No, totally. And speaking about things that are coming up that are really cool, Hanover, this Friday, you got the Starland Sportsplex, which I don't know where that name came from. I don't know. Have you been to that building before?
No.
Okay.
I have not, but I heard it's kind of like an old everything entertainment stuff type of deal.
Yes, and it's just funny, like, I don't know, whenever you hear, like, Starland Sportsplex, you think you're going to go to this very modern, like, amazing thing, like, like these new House of Blues that are popping up in every town. But this is not that, but that also, I think, fits a little bit of what House of Hardcore is all about. And, for your first show there, you've done shows in Massachusetts before, though, correct?
This is my debut in the Massachusetts area. And
that blows my mind.
House of Hardcore. I've wrestled.
Yeah.
Massachusetts that was my first ever road trip in my life as a wrestler. And always, and I always want to, bring my brand there, doing stuff at back when it was Wonderland.
Oh, yeah.
Up at the dog park in Revere.
Mm-hmm.
So bringing my brand up there means a lot to me. But yes, it is. I'm just a different view of professional wrestling, and a lot of people have asked me, well, what's the difference between House of Hardcore and something else. And I say, you know what? It's just like being a Red Sox fan or being a Yankee fan. We have our own different fan bases. We have different management styles. We have different stars on our teams. But yes, it is still professional wrestling. So it's kind of that's how I view it. There's still going to be a ring. There's still going to be men and women busting their butts for the entertainment of the crowd, but it's still professional wrestling. I'm not trying to split the atom. I'm just trying to show people a variation of what I feel professional wrestling is. And I'm happy to come up there. Like I said, it's always been, the first place I ever got in my car at 19 years old and drove to, a show, nervous as can be, because there was no Google Maps or GPSs. It was atlases and calling. It was in North Chelmsford, Massachusetts, by the way. And so that was where, my career of being on the road since I've been wrestling. Love to give back, and that's what we're going to be doing on Friday.
Now, do you recall who you were wrestling against, or what were you doing when your first trip here to Massachusetts?
My first trip ever was I wrestled. He became Big Vito. It was his first match.
Yep.
And he also, I was a big fan of Sting, and if you remember, Sting would always do lockup, tackle, headlock. It would be headlock, tackle. He would do one leapfrog, drop down, and do another leapfrog. And right there in North Chelmsford High School, Big Vito being nervous. This was probably my fourth match, and I did tackle, drop down, leapfrog once, leapfrog twice, except for Big Vito forgot to duck. I remember seeing my feet and my head touch the mat at the same time. I folded in half. And it was a rough one. And then I remember going home, and I was in a lot of pain on that 4-hour car ride home, just because my body had bent in half, and also I had ice in between my legs because I got the errant. You did not duck my leapfrogs. I don't have the hops to jump over a 6-foot man.
Yeah. Well,
that's a rough drive home.
And with all due respect, at 19, it must have hurt. Could you imagine doing that this coming Friday?
Oof, I couldn't. I wouldn't even.
That could be it. That could be the end of Tommy Dreamer right there in Hanover. We don't want that. It just could be. But one thing I wanted to credit for this event, and this could be streamed on Twitch TV, which I love you guys doing that. That's the only way I've seen this before, and I think that's a fantastic partnership. What you're doing with Twitch is so smart, and a lot of people are starting to gravitate. A lot of the wrestling community is starting to get on there. I've seen Eric Bischoff doing stuff on there now with his new podcast. It's a really smart move, and the smartest move that I see coming this week is you have Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards, and I can't confirm it's the first time I've heard this, but a Boston street fight. Probably sort of the Chicago street fights. I don't know what the Boston street fight, if there's a comparable.
You heard of the Boston street fight?
No, I've been in a few, but I've never actually heard of a match style.
Kevin Sullivan had a few Boston street fights. They've had Boston street fights for a lot of times, but it's basically, kind of anything goes, no holds barred, and you put the local city in front of it. I've never heard, I've heard of a New York street fight. I've heard of a Chicago street fight that was with the Road Warriors. I've never heard of like a Mississippi street fight.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, are you going
to street fight? If there's ever a place, to have a street fight, it's right outside the streets of Boston. But hopefully, the match doesn't go out that way. But no, it's Eddie and Sami. You talk about the difference between me being a wrestling fan as also being a promoter. These two guys, that stemmed off of an injury from Impact Wrestling. Then social media, people start running their mouths, and this is a real kind of a feud. It reminds me a little bit of me and Raven, and just Eddie's from the area. And I also look at a lot of these shows. Eddie is under contract with Impact Wrestling. Sami is not under contract with Impact Wrestling, but he works with me a lot. So it's a lot of I always like to say, and kind of what it was, my vision of professional wrestling is no politics, no BS, just wrestling, and that's what you're going to see at my show. Because you're going to see stars from Lucha Underground, you're going to see stars from Impact Wrestling, stars from House of Hardcore, and stars from anywhere where there's wrestling, and myself. I technically sometimes work with WWE. I'm a writer on the Edge and Christian show. So it's just, you're going to see a whole lot of, back when I was growing up, they were called supercards where you wouldn't see a lot of men and women like that. So that's kind of what I like to bring to the table.
Well, what's
I'm a wrestling fan.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to say. What's exciting about this is I can sense, now obviously for people that don't know, Tommy Dreamer is a part of Busted Open, which airs from 9 to noon on Sirius XM. You're on there a couple times. Is there a schedule for you there, or are you just sporadic? Because once a week I definitely know I've heard you. Maybe twice?
I'm sporadic right now. I'm kind of the fill-in host. I'll actually be hosting Friday, the day of my show, live in studio. And driving up to Boston after that.
Oh, wow. That's going to be a hell of a day. But aside from that, you're also, like you just said, you are a wrestling fan. That's what I get when I listen to you on that show. That's what I get whenever I hear you in other interviews and just listening to you, talking with you right now. That is, I think, the part that should bring people to these events and being a part, because there's so many wrestling promoters out there and shows that I've gone to locally as well as in different parts, even when I went down to New Orleans, that some of these guys are just, it's such a business to them, and you can sense it by either the reaction that some of the wrestlers may go out on social media and tell you about, or just the aura that the show gives. And Tommy, I can just say firsthand, just hearing the way you speak about this, hearing the way you're bringing all these different elements, like Lucha Underground is not coming to Boston. Impact Wrestling isn't even, I don't think, traveling at all right now, and they're not coming to Boston, but you have the best of both of those worlds and all these other independent guys that have, had namesake in different places, and you're bringing them all here. And like you said, the match that we're talking about is Sami Callihan, who legitimately hit Eddie Edwards with a baseball bat in the face. And
correct. How he didn't crush his orbital bone, or it could have been a lot worse, but
sure could have. And working here, we have Dale Arnold's one of our hosts here. He's a big wrestling fan as well. He works in the Boston Bruins, and him and Eddie connect, and I was part of a conversation with the three, and he thought that was like going to be a much worse issue when it first happened. Like the night of when it broke, and you saw it on social media, and then when they ended up putting on the television program, like this could have been a very, like, you remember when Joey Mercury had that ladder to the face and a match against the Hardys back? Like that was a devastating injury to him, but he came back from that as well. And he works with you as well, doesn't he, Joey?
I was going to say, Joey will be there in Hanover.
Look at this. All basically, if you bust your face on television, you're going to be able to book yourself on House of Hardcore.
And my in wrestling too, and I experienced it a lot. People judge a book by its cover, and I declared at WrestleMania weekend my first ever champion. He's my Twitch television champion. His name is Willie Mack. He does work with Lucha Underground, and the Mack Attack is going to have his first ever title defense against the Machine, Brian Cage. Another match that Willie is under contract with Lucha Underground. He is under contract with me, and Brian Cage is under contract with Impact Wrestling and Lucha Underground. So it's, and when I do these, it's again, as a guys, there's, my motto: no politics, no BS, just wrestling. And if it's anyone doesn't want to, I've been very, very fortunate so far that I haven't come up with it because it does. Politics plays such a hand in wrestling, and I can't stand it. I just want the fans to enjoy it. And, it's when I'm, I guess, the general manager of a team / owner of a team, and I pick these people specifically because I feel that they give the best product for the fans. And that's huge for me. I have everything in my life because of wrestling. This is all I've ever wanted to do since I was 9 years old, and it was cemented at 10 years old where I said, this is what I'm doing. And, grew up a wrestling fan, was at WrestleMania 1, still am a wrestling fan. I watch Monday Night Raw, I watch SmackDown, I watch Lucha Underground, I watch House of Hardcore every Wednesday night at 9.
Nice.
On Twitch, I watch Impact. I watch anything I can, and always have, from world-class championship wrestling to Mid-South Georgia. I watch it all, so that's just me. And even when I first started doing this, a lot of people were like, oh, it's an ECW revival, because a lot of times I'll use Bubba before he was unable to wrestle anymore. Devon, I'd use Rhino until he got signed, and it was just like, no, man, ECW was the best. It was an amazing time. I'm never trying to recapture past glory. I'm trying to make new moments for fans so they can be like, wow, I was there for, the House of Hardcore's first ever show in, Massachusetts. So I saw Willie Mack's first ever, title defense because, again, I can remember my father taking me to WrestleMania, it was the first time he ever really, I don't want to say lost control of me, but when Andre the Giant started throwing money to the crowd from Big John Studd's Body Slam Challenge,
Yep.
I just darted down there, and I came back to my seat. He's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "Dad, that was $10,000." He's like, "I don't care. You don't ever run away from me."
Dude,
I was just like, "I wanted that money."
That's like when Bret Hart used to take off the glasses. That was my thing. I lost, because you see it on television. And then I remember when he came to I think at the Garden at the time, and I remember I did the same thing. And he was like, "You don't leave my side. I don't trust anybody, regardless." And obviously, wrestling community, one thing I think they get a lack of credit for is that it's usually a pretty, you have your loudmouths and stuff, but it's usually a pretty good crowd when you come to these events. But I remember that, and I'll never forget the look my father gave me, the way he grabbed my shoulder. I was like, oh man, he put the fear of death in me in that day. And all I wanted was those Bret Hart sunglasses, but I didn't get them.
Awesome. But you see, for me, my dad's no longer with me, and when I think of a moment like that, I'm young. I have not a care in the world. My father is still around, and just when I remember the first time the NWA ever came to the Northeast, was at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, and it was a great day for me and my dad. And he wasn't sick. He had Parkinson's disease later on in his life.
Sorry.
And it was just one of those moments that, man, I was like, it was a really good day. So, and then that's what I want people when they come to my shows, to have fun, forget about all the crap that's going on in the world. You can watch the Celtics on Saturday, and then
you doing your research.
Just have fun.
Now, Tommy, you said since 9, this is all you want to do. Was there ever doubt somewhere in there, maybe even in the last 20 years more than when you were younger, that made you go I don't know if I'm going to do this anymore? Or did that ever go through your head?
Absolutely. And it's funny reading Keith Hernandez's book. Like I said, he started when he was 18. He hit 400 was his average in high school.
It's crazy.
Now at 18, he's in AA. And he starts, striking out all the time, not getting hits. He at least had a coach that believed him, and they promoted him to AAA. And he's like, that would never happen today. For me, one was I had my first 2 matches, and I was like, oh, I'm a pro wrestler. This was in 1989. It was October 28th, and then the next one was December 3rd. And I was like, oh, I'm totally a pro wrestler. And, walking around, I was a big man on campus. I was still in college. I was bouncing. And, I was one of those guys. I was more of a wannabe than anything else. I stopped going to, wrestling school, stopped going, to practice. And, I was just, for about maybe even 3-4 months, I was just I'm totally conquered. Oh, here, young lady, you want to see my VCR tape of my match, as me being a wrestler. And then when I went back, and it was actually my father's like, hey, man, you haven't been going to training. You haven't gone that. And I was just like, he's like, where is all, you paid $3,000 to go to school. Where's this money coming back? And that was a little bit of a wake up call for me. And then another time when I went to Japan, and I was getting beat up every day, and wrestling every day was different, but I was also getting physically beat up in the sense of we would have to set up the ring. We would have to jog around the ring for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then sometimes take 150 bumps before the show even started. And that was, 50 body slams, 50 hip tosses, 50 backdrops, and then go wrestle, break down the ring, and then getting on a bus for, 8 to 10 hours. And I was in Japan. I was just missing my family, my life, and there's no cell phones you could call and pick up. And I was just like, I don't know if I could do this. And then this was early on in the tour, and then probably 6 to 7 days later, I was like, I got my first real paycheck, and I was like, whoa, I'm a pro wrestler, and the pain and sacrifice what made me, and a lot of times you had stuff in ECW where you're going to make it, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
That's just being a professional and experiencing all these things. And then you go to WWE, you're back to being the bottom guy on the rung of the ladder. You're chasing that dream. So it's just, I never had doubt once I got to WWE. It's just it was just different. I realized this isn't ECW anymore.
Sure. And I'm sure that was a tough transition because I've heard you talk about this before, as well as Bully Bubba Ray, and that it just, when you talk about the three things that your company stands for, I'm not trying to call out anybody with WWE, but there's a lot of politics there. It's a known thing, and I'm just a fan, and I hear from you guys who have experienced it and other guys now that are, putting their stories out there, whether it be in book form or audio form and podcasting, and I'm sure that transition right there was that the hardest one of your career?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was, and, going from where I was able to discuss stuff with my boss creatively to being told what I had to do to not really having any creative control on, what you're doing. But I always had awesome meetings with Vince, but again, it's real sports because it's like going to one team and either being traded to another or a new management team comes in and everyone's just like, what's going on? Well, I was a star with these people. Well, you're not a star here because you're an unproven commodity.
Yeah.
You guys are going through that up in Boston, but at least you guys are responding well.
We're trying, dude. We're trying. And one thing, to clear this up, I know you've talked about it, and you've talked about like creative teams and stuff like that. And then Bruce Pritchard's gone on his podcast and said he didn't remember you being part of creative team. When you were at WWE, what sense, did you ever have time with the creative team, or was it just more you with the creative team in your own cases, or were you actually part of the actual creation of what they were, producing at the time?
I was on creative, and Bruce Pritchard was always on the phone during that time. He was on the conference call.
Yes.
So maybe that's why he doesn't. And that was, but I've heard that from a couple of times.
Yeah.
Bruce, maybe sometimes in a lot of people's podcasts, you either forget or you create your own narrative to what you think you remember. But yeah, I was on creative for a whopping 5 to 6 weeks, and I couldn't deal. I was also being a wrestler, and I kind of laughed at the beautiful creative genius known as the Katie Vick angle. And then they basically, very nicely, and it was when Steph was in charge of creative, said, Tommy, we're having the creative meeting this Thursday. You don't have to be there. It's like, okay, cool. Thanks.
Well, you know what?
So then I wrote ECW One Night Stand 2005.
Yes.
I actually had a fight for Paulie to be on it because they hated Paulie at that time. So, I'll remind Bruce next time I see him.
Please do.
He'll be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, the fact that you, for that 5-week stretch, had anything to do or had to be involved or listen to the creative around that Katie Vick, that could probably drive somebody to not want to be in those meetings anymore. I could only imagine.
It was just different.
Sure.
It really, truly was. And my biggest part, and I'm not one of those guys that knocks people, like if you're not a wrestler that, you need to be, a wrestler to understand, being creative. I'm very good friends with Brian Gewirtz, Ed Koski, who's still there.
Yep.
But those guys, they could come up with a great show, but then it gets tinkered with. And that was one thing that I could not understand. And sometimes I'd even go to them and I'd be like, what happened? And even for me running my own company, and I learned this from Paul, and same with me, I will take and listen to other people's ideas that if they're better than mine, I will run with it. But then, or if I'm so set in my ways, it's going to fall on my shoulders. And that's how my success and or my failure will always fall on me. I will always put my money where my mouth is. And with those poor guys and girls, they would come up with a great idea and then it wouldn't happen. And I'd be like, what happened? And like, it got changed because, and I view it as if you're asked to go out there and paint the Mona Lisa and, your boss says, go out there and give me the Mona Lisa, and you paint an exact replica of the Mona Lisa, but then someone chimes in and says, well, why don't you put earrings on the Mona Lisa? And you're like, well, no, but that's not a Mona Lisa. And then someone says, well, why don't you make the Mona Lisa smile? She doesn't look like she's smiling. No. Well, you asked me to create the Mona Lisa. That's what the Mona Lisa looks like. And then, well, why don't you put sunglasses on the Mona Lisa and dye her hair blonde? So
Dude.
now you present the Mona Lisa on Monday Night Raw, and if it doesn't go so well, then they turn and look at you and said, I asked you for the Mona Lisa. What happened? And it's like, no, this person changed and this person changed. And then it's unfortunately, it's no, they didn't.
Oh.
But no, yes, they did. So that's the politics of stuff that I cannot stand.
And I'll say that's
If I fail, trust me,
Yep.
I'm the first to admit it. If I succeed, it's a team effort, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, and you're not alone, and that's not just a wrestling business thing. I'm sure this is, that's a big part of it, but that happens everywhere, man. I work, in the radio industry. That happens just the same. The idea comes out, it looks this way. Well, why did it go that way? Well, he said, she said, this person said. Too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes. But, Tommy, I appreciate your time here. I'm looking forward to this coming Friday night. You got in Hanover, House of Hardcore 42. We talked about the Sami Callihan, Eddie Edwards, Boston Street fight. We talked about the Twitch TV title match between Willie Mack and Brian Cage. Are you fighting on this card?
I'm always there. Come on, man. Can't get rid of me. I spend a lot of money just so I could go out there and wrestle, and people say I still got it. I'm the biggest idiot there is. I got Chelsea Green taking on Alyssa, who's Eddie Edwards' wife, another Boston native. I got a bunch of men and women from Chaotic Wrestling up there. They're helping me out. The Spirit Squad, Ken Doan, who's from Massachusetts, he'll be up there. Alex Reynolds, Joey Mercury, a couple of nice surprises. JT Dunn, who's from Rhode Island. Trust me, I go all out because that's I look at some of the cards that we used to seriously bring to the Wonderland Dog Park.
Dude.
And I look at those cards, and some of them are Hall of Famers are in that show.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want people, this isn't, I have Joe Blow fighting Joe Blow just because they helped me sell a couple of tickets. No, I have men and women that I believe in. So hopefully everyone enjoys the show.
I want to thank Tommy Dreamer again for joining me. Amazing storyteller, amazing wrestling fan, and I can't wait for you to go check out House of Hardcore. It's happening in Hanover this coming Friday night. $25 tickets. You can waste more than that at McDonald's, so don't do that. Don't waste your money. Go enjoy yourself, have a fun night of wrestling, and support some local guys like Eddie Edwards and so many more that are going to be a part of this amazing card. One takeaway I took from that interview, and Tommy can talk, man. He can go on, and it's all good stuff. He's a wealth of knowledge. Even that Keith Hernandez stuff, I didn't know where he was going there, but I love how he said working for different wrestling organizations is like working for different, company or sports teams. Like if you go from the Yankees to the Red Sox, the management style, like it's all kind of like the same business model, but the management style is different. The way they treat you is different. So it was a real interesting conversation with Tommy, and I'm very, very happy and pleased that he was able to join me. I want to shout out to Mark James for hooking us up together. I'm going to be milking that Mark James for more guests, and many more guests to come here on Rossi on Wrestling, the debut episode, the pilot. Please give me your feedback. Send a like, leave a comment on this wherever you're listening. And I just want to say, if you want to follow me, check me out on Twitter. It's at Jason D. Rossi. We'll be back here next week for a follow-up episode. We'll be doing post-shows, pre-shows, previews, reviews, everything. There'll be so many more segments and stuff to come. This is just the beginning. If you're a wrestling fan here in Boston, you're a sports talk radio listener, you're looking for somewhere, you're looking for something to attach yourself to, right here. It's Rossi on Wrestling. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen. We'll catch you all next week.